Hello YouTube and welcome to Sci Prime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily cover Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder. So last time we talked about the class archetypes that came out of the new, as of the posting of this video, Lost Omens Divine Mysteries book. So let's continue on and talk about the regular old archetypes. That's right, all of the following are normal archetypes, not class archetypes, so they follow the normal archetype rules. If you need a refresher on how archetypes work, I put out a video a while ago that explains it. Oh, and reminder, I got a free copy of Divine Mysteries from Paizo as a review copy, but they are in no other way reimbursing me. Thank you for the free copy, Paizo. So, the first archetype in the book that isn't a class archetype is the Mortal Herald. The idea behind this archetype is that you have been chosen by a god to do their bidding on the mortal realm. You can't get access to this archetype until level 12, which is pretty late, and the requirement is that you basically have to be the follower of a deity. Oh, quick note, the archetype can also act as a mythic destiny if you are following mythic rules. There's also a few mythic feats in this archetype if you are a mythic character, but the archetype doesn't require a mythic game, just ignore the mythic stuff if you're in a normal game. So, the dedication feat does a couple of things. First of all, just people recognize you as a mortal herald of your god. Like, people just see you and intuitively know, but maybe not consciously. Secondly, you may get sanctified holy or unholy depending on your deity. Thirdly, you get a single heal spell once a day that gets better as you level up. You can only cast it on yourself, but it only takes a single action to get the effects of the 2-action version. Also, if someone hits you and doesn't kill you outright, but you would still go unconscious, you can cast it on yourself as a reaction, preventing yourself from going down, which is awesome. And then there's just an absurd number of other feats you can grab. Like, look at all of these. And some of these feats are pretty powerful, like one feat giving you 2 domain spells that you can retrain at the start of the day. Or how about this feat that just permanently gives you a fly speed? Or a feat that lets you cast Avatar once a day. Avatar is a rank 10 spell, so a feat that gives you a rank 10 spell once a day is pretty crazy. One super strong option is Ease the Burden. It's a touch ability. Once an hour, you can heal someone 100 hit points and reduce all of these negative conditions by 1. No roll to counteract or anything. Pretty good stuff. There's also feats that give you spirit resistance or make your weapons do spirit damage. I do have to rub my head at the Marked for Rebuke feat. It's a spell shape, so you use this action and then cast a spell. If you damage someone with that spell, one creature that took damage gains weakness 10 to all damage until your next turn, and then is immune to the effect for the next 24 hours. That could be crazy good. It only takes a single action to activate, it can be done with a cantrip, and there's no cooldown for using it on different people every round. Imagine doing that and then your friend with a flaming frost lightning bow attacks an enemy. That's basically plus 40 damage per hit. Then again, it does come online at level 18, so not a lot of chances to use it. Mortal Herald is a great archetype, and there's a lot of power here, but I don't think that it's overpowered. There's a whole lot of options, and most of them feel powerful without breaking the game. Maybe except for Marked for Rebuke, which is a little strong. I might reduce it down so that the next time someone takes damage, they have a weakness 10 to all damage type, so that the bad guy doesn't take like plus 400 damage from 10 attacks hitting them in a round. One thing to remember, these awesome archetype feats will be competing for your high-level class feats, so not everyone or every build can make use of them. I also realize some people might not like being restrained by a deity's edicts and anathemas, so there's that. Moving on, Razmiran Priest is an interesting archetype. So, quick recap, Razmir is an archmage and the leader of the nation of Razmaran. However, he pretends to be a living god, and most people in his nation believe this. He has so-called priests that run around in masks and perform quote-unquote miracles. These priests are usually some other kind of spellcaster, maybe a bard, but they are good at tricking people into believing that they are actually clerics of Razmir. Apparently, though, Razmir has enough collective belief energy going now that he's starting to get some sort of spiritual power, and you can be one of his so-called priests. So, the Razmaran priest archetype is weird. Firstly, to get the archetype, you have to be trained in deception because of all the lying, and crafting because the priest has to make their own masks. So the dedication feat does two things. The first thing is that the priest can make a mask that works only for them. If they wear their own mask, they gain a +1 bonus to certain deception checks, and they can, once per minute, touch someone to give them temporary HP that lasts a whole day. That's crazy. Most temporary HP lasts for a round, maybe a minute, but a whole day? Additionally, the temp HP can bring someone up from unconsciousness even if they are still at 0 hit points. As long as they have their special temp HP, they get up. Pretty cool. The other thing the dedication feat does is let you take cleric dedication, waiving all prerequisites, including needing to get 2 more Rezmiran priest feats. Remember that to take a second archetype, you usually need to take 3 feats in your previous archetype first. Not so for the priest going into cleric. But that's not all. When you take cleric dedication this way, it becomes an occult spellcasting class, though I think you still use the divine list. Also, their spellcasting attribute becomes charisma. This could really open up a lot of possibilities, using charisma to cast cleric spells with the occult tag. I'm sure there's a use for that out there somewhere. Further Rezmiran priest feats in the line give the priest kind of janky knockoff cleric spells that still help but don't work quite as well as full cleric spells. Other archetype feats help a priest lie better. Final thoughts on the Rezmiran priest: it could be really cool. Because the dedication lets someone take the cleric dedication, waiving all prerequisites, your -1 charisma or wisdom character can still cast spells like a cleric. As long as the spells are all like healing or beneficial spells, you need not worry about your spellcasting save DC. That's pretty neat. Also, taking like 4 minutes before every fight to give your entire party a bit of temporary HP would also be nice. The big downside of the archetype is the flavor thing. It's heavily implied that to gain access to the feat you have to be a follower of Razmir. I mean, it's not listed in the access or the requirements, but it's pretty obvious. And Razmir is a pretty bad dude, killing anyone who speaks ill of him and levying ridiculous taxes on his population. Also, he gives his priests just like free reign to abuse their power. Not great. Also, he doesn't generally let his priests go adventuring, so it may not fit most adventuring lifestyles to be a Rezmiran priest. You may have to work with your GM and heavily house rule some stuff in order to get one into a campaign for your player character. Moving on, the last 3 archetypes we are going to talk about today are all Rivethun-based archetypes. So, Rivethun is a thing that existed in Pathfinder for a while, but it's been codified in Divine Mysteries. Essentially, Rivethun is a dwarven tradition, though non-dwarves follow it as well, of animism. In other words, they commune with various spirits and view the dwarven god Torag and his pantheon as like the topmost spirits. Rivethun even has a deity stat block here, so you could be a cleric of it. Anyway, each of these 3 archetypes are all Rivethun-based and require you to follow the Rivethun to get access to them, so you basically have to follow the edicts and anathemas on screen now. So the first archetype, Rivethun Emissary, is all about talking with and working with spirits of the Rivethun. It requires you to be trained in diplomacy and religion, and taking this dedication gets you up to expert in those skills. You can also bond with a spirit of the land, and if you do, you can cast this spell, Entreat Spirit. Entreating a spirit gives you a bonus to a mental skill of your choice and a bonus to some saves. These bonuses increase as you increase in level. It is a focus spell, but it only lasts a minute, sadly. The level 4 feat is where it is at, though. It gives you a familiar with some extra abilities, and you can spend 1 action to turn all of your strikes and spell damage into spirit damage for a round. Okay, not all of your spells, but spells like Fireball and such. That's really good. Not a lot of creatures resist spirit damage, so it lets you, say, lean into being a fire sorcerer without worrying about running into fire-immune enemies. Other feats give you an initial domain spell that you can change up with a day of downtime. The flavor is that you bond with a spirit and gain a cleric domain spell that relates to that spirit. So if you find the right spirit, you could theoretically have any domain spell. Other feats give you a few once-per-day spells, or give you a new focus spell called Entreat the Many, which is basically a fireball that does force damage and is centered on yourself. Rivethun Emissary is pretty flavorful. You can get a little bonus to a skill in tense situations, and that ability to turn most spells into ones that do spirit damage could be really strong in the right game. Plus, you can basically get access to any initial domain spell and retrain it with a day of downtime, which is wild. But other than that, not a huge amount of power. Nothing game-breaking, but I think it would be both fun and flavorful. I do have a nagging feeling that getting access to any domain, again if you find the right spirit, kinda just dumps on the cleric. Like, the cleric has a feat that gives them access to one initial domain spell from a list of around 4 domains based on their deity. The emissary with a feat at level 6 gets access to every initial domain spell, and they can retrain it with a day of downtime. It's not game-breaking or anything, but it just seems like a straight-up better option than being a cleric. I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The next archetype is Rivathun Invoker. It requires training in athletics and religion, and the dedication gives you expert in those skills. However, the big thing is that they can enter a spirit trance as an action. When they do, they gain some temporary HP, a +1 bonus to all fortitude and will saving throws, and their melee strikes do an additional +1 spirit damage. This essentially gives them like a mini barbarian rage, except the damage is less, and there's some save bonuses, and more importantly, it doesn't limit your actions unlike barbarian rage. However, if they drop out of the stance, they can't go back into it for a minute. The Invoke Offense feat gives them an unarmed attack that gets better as they gain levels. There's a feat to heal themselves. The Invoke Defense feat gives them resistance to piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning damage, which can be changed up whenever they enter a new trance. The level 16 feat, One with the Spirits, kinda lets them go Super Saiyan, giving them fast healing, making their strikes Gust Touch, and they can choose for their attacks to do spirit damage if they want. Also, if they would be knocked unconscious, they can self-heal once. Final thoughts for the Rivathun Invoker. I'm conflicted. It's undoubtedly strong, and it's strong for everyone. Straight +1 to melee damage helps almost all martials, and a +1 to all fort and will saves helps everyone, casters and martials alike. And it just costs an action to get into. Now, I don't think this is too strong, but it's just like really good for every class compared to every other option. And on top of that, feats for free healing or feats for any one physical damage resist that you can change up. Again, I don't think this is game-breaking, but it might be a bit problematic. I've said this before, I'm kind of against options that are so good that they just blow all other options out of the water, even if they aren't strictly speaking game-breaking. I think it runs the risk of turning Pathfinder into a game where there is a, quote, right and wrong way to play it, unquote, and I don't like that kind of mentality. I've seen it turn into toxicity too easily in too many other fandoms, but that's just my opinion. The final Rivathun archetype is the Rivathun Involutionist. This one requires you to follow the Rivathun, of course, but also be trained in nature and religion. The dedication progresses the nature and religion skills to expert and gives you 2 divine cantrips with wisdom as the casting ability. This archetype has all 3 traditional divine spellcasting archetype feats. In other words, there are 3 feats, one that gives you a rank 1, 2, and 3 spell, a second that gives you a rank 4, 5, and 6 spell, and then one that gives you eventually a rank 7 and 8 spell. It's more complicated than that, but that's the short version. Notably, the Involutionist does not have a breadth feat though, so the archetype only gets 1 spell per spell rank. Now, there is a level 4 feat for the Involutionist that gives a spiritual animal companion, and okay, we have to talk about this for a second. Now, I haven't really talked about animal companions much on this channel before, and I'm not really into them. I don't use them for my personal builds, so I'll try to sum up as best I can. Most of the time, when you get an animal companion, whether it be through a feat or a class feature or whatever, it is a young animal companion and will have some base statistics. Most times, the class or archetype or wherever you got the animal companion from will give you an option to take a feat to make your animal companion mature, which increases its stats. Then, often you can take further feats to make it specialized, which doesn't increase its stats, but instead gives it special abilities. So, the level 4 Involutionist gives you a special spiritual animal companion, though if you already have an animal companion, it just becomes spiritual. The feat also lets you spend an action to activate your animal companion's latent blessing, which lets its attacks do spirit damage instead of normal damage. Now, the Involutionist does not get an option to make their animal companion mature, but there is a level 14 feat that lets them pick up a specialization ability. The first ability is going to have to be Ghost Touch on all of the animal's attacks, but after that you can pick up other specializations. So, not sure how I feel about the Rivathun Involutionist. I mean, if you wanted to, you could just add more cleric spells to your cleric, getting additional cleric spells through Rivathun Involutionist, which is fun. The lack of a breath spell is probably intentional, but it would have been nice. Oh, and unlike Cleric Dedication, you don't have to have a +2 in Wisdom to get this archetype, so you could give your low Wisdom character some divine spells for like healing and enhancing the party and such. As for the Spiritual Animal Companion, that's a lot harder to call. Not being able to get an Animal Companion up to mature could really end up hurting it, or it could be fine depending on what you're doing with that animal. I think this archetype would be best on like a Druid or a Ranger or someone else who gets an Animal Companion normally. Then you could use this archetype to supercharge your Animal Companion, having it do spirit damage and the like, and then get the animal to mature Animal Companion through your normal class abilities. But I don't know, like I said, I'm new to the whole Animal Companion part of the game. Those aren't the kind of characters I like playing personally. I've heard that it doesn't matter so much getting your Animal Companion to mature if your Animal Companion is a mount, so the Involutionist might make a good, like, cavalry character maybe? Anyway, that's all for today. I did want to quickly thank everyone in Swing Ripper's Discord server for helping me muddle through some of the questions I had with these archetypes. No man's an island, so thanks to everyone over there for helping me out. Oh, quick shout out to my new book I have on DriveThruRPG and PathfinderInfinite.com. It's a super short little supplement, only $5. It just has a bunch of hazards that you might find in a haunted house, easy to reflavor them to something else, and it's also easy to change up the level of them if you have GM core, so go check it out if you're interested. Anyway, let me know what you thought, and as always, please remember to be civil in the comments. And please remember to like and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you like this kind of content and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming!